highly appreciated ruling on highly anticipated ruling on Trump's immunity bid expected. Australia, Jimmy Lewy urged judge to carefully consider their position. Now the details. President Cyril Ramaphosa appointed former opposition John Steenhuisen as Minister of Agriculture on Sunday, bringing the Democratic Alliance and other parties into his new coalition cabinet. Ramaphosa's Afrikaans National Congress was forced to join force with rival parties to stay in power after losing its majority for the first time in 3 decades in May 29 election. The announcement of the new cabinet of the Government of National Unity followed a week of protested as the time acrimonious negotiation. Ramaphosa's return, the ANC's Enoch Godeswawan as financial minister, while Ronald Lamola was appointed Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, replacing Nalandi Pando. Egwande Natanshe stayed on the Mineral and Petroleum Resource Minister, but the president removed energy from its portfolio. The combination of the mineral resources has been seen by many as created a prejudice in favor of coal as a source of power generation. Energy will now fall within the portfolio of Electricity Minister Kosintosho Romogopa. These men and women we have appointed to the executive reflects the density for our nation. Ramaphosa said in a spirit of partnership and collaboration, the incoming government will work together. Wangling over to get what cabinet seat was at least hindered to settle up a government, which now faced the task of the reviving a moribund economy, fixing crumbling roads and power stations, and creating jobs for the third of South Africans out of the work. We look forward to bring part of a new era in South Africa's democratic journey and to bring in real and tangible change to the millions of citizens who voted for it. Hussein said in it following the announcement, some minor parties also saw their leaders receive cabinet posts. Mauritanian President Mohamed Ould Ghazouani has won the country's presidential election according to provisional results from over 99.27% of polling stations released by the West African Nations Electoral Commission Sunday. Ghazouani was re-elected on Saturday election with over 56% of the vote. Results from 4,468 polling stations out of 4,503 showed a Mauritanian's Independent Electoral Commission's website. The 67-year-old former Army Chief of Staff and the Defense Minister, who was first elected in 2019, was pledged to boost investment to pour a commodity boom in the West African countries of 5 million people, as it was prepared to start producing natural gas by the end of the year. Analysts had expected Ghazouani, who faced 6 challenges in the election, to win the race in the first round, thanks to Mauritania's ruling party dominance. The provisional results shows that his main rival, anti-slavery activist Bahrain Bar Adebt, was second with 22.14%, followed by Hamadi Sidi El Mato of the Islamic Tawassul Party with 12.8%. Earlier on Sunday, Habib rejected the provisional results. We will not accept these results from the so-called Independent Electoral Commission. We will use our own electoral commission to proclaim the results, Abide told a news conference on the Windhoek, the capital. Before the election, El Mako had warned that his party would not accept the results if it suspected rigging. In the 2019 election, some opposition candidates questioned the credibility of the votes sparking small-scale protests. Preliminary figures showed the turnout at Saturday's vote was just under 55.33%, the Commission's data showed. An online petition calling for South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol will be impeached experienced delay and disruption due to the large number of people trying to sign in. The Speaker of the Parliament said, promising to fix the issues as soon as possible. More than 811,000 people have so far signed the petition hosted to the National Assembly's website since it went live on June 20. The petition calls on the Parliament to introduce a bill to impeach Yoon on ground that he is unfit for the job. In a statement late on Sunday, National Assembly Speaker Woo Wong-shing apologized for the disruption and said Parliament will take action to uphold the public constitutional rights. People trying to access the petition on Monday faced delay that lasted up to 4 hours. At one point, an error message showed more than 30,000 people were waiting to access the site. There was no immediate comment from the presidential office. The petitioner accused Yoon of corruption, soaking the risk of the war with North Korea and exposing South Koreans to health risks by not stopping Japan from releasing threat radioactive water from the working Fukushima nuclear power plant. By law, Parliament is required to assign any petition signed by more than 50,000 people to commit, which will then decide whether to put it to the Assembly for a vote. But the opposition Democratic Party, which held a majority in Parliament, is hesitant about turning the petition into the impeachment bill. Media reports says, with a spokesperson saying the party has yet to discuss the matter. The Parliament can call for a president's impeachment with a 2/3 majority. The Constitutional Court then deliberated that motion and decided to remove or reinstate the president. Yoon has been unpopular since taking office in 2022, with his latest approval rating hovering around the 25% mark since April. South Korean Parliament has twice impeached President Roh Moo-hyun in 2004 and Park Kyu-hee in 2017. Roh was reinstated by the Constitutional Court while Park was removed. North Korea fired 2 ballistic missiles on Monday, and the second may have fallen and blew up during an irregular fight. Possible raining debris in launch, South Korean military said. South Korea was still analyzing the launch and did not immediately have confirmation whether there was any casualties or damage to North Korean property. Military spokesperson Lee Seong-yong told a briefing. South Korea's Joint Brief of Staff earlier said the North fired a short-range ballistic missile that flew about 6,000 km and a second ballistic missile that flew about 120 km, both from the area near the west coast. Both were fired towards the northeast. They said the trajectory means the second may have fallen in the area close to the north capital, Gwangjong, but Lee said the military was unable to comment further. South Korea has said it watched the North missile launch from the preparation stage and tracked the projectile in flight. We strongly condemn North Korea's missile launch as a provocation that seriously threatens peace and stability on the Korean peninsula, the Joint Chief of Staff said in a statement, adding it shared information on the missile with U.S. and Japanese authorities. The South Korean military will maintain its capacity and posture to respond overwhelmingly to any provocation while closely monitoring North Korean various activities under a strong South Korean-U.S. joint defense posture. The second missile on Monday would be the second failed launch in 5 days. South Korea's military said the North fired that appeared to be an hypersonic missile on Wednesday, but is played out of control and exploded. The first missile fire on Monday appeared to be similar to the North KN-23 short-range ballistic missile, which is believed to have been used by the Russians against Ukraine. North Korea is expected of supplying ballistic missiles and artillery shell to Russia. Both countries denying it despite their pledge of military cooperation and a recently signed pacts that include promises of the mutual military support. South Korea's officials have said North Korea's recent short-range ballistic missiles launch may be intended to show it was to potential buyers. On Sunday, North Korea criticized the joint military exercise by South Korea, Japan, and the United States held last month and warned of overwhelming response against such drills. North Korea said that week it has successfully conducted an important test aimed at developing missiles carrying multiple warheads, a claim rejected by the South Korean as deception to mark a failed launch. Myanmar's central bank denying a UN report that the country's military government can still access money and the weapons for its war against anti-coup forces, saying financial institutions under the bank's supervision followed prescribed procedures. The Central Bank of Myanmar expressed over a strong objection to the UN Special Rapporteur report. It said in a statement published in a Junta newspaper on Saturday, the UN report severely harms the interests of the Myanmar civilians and the relationship between the Myanmars and other countries. The rapporteur on the Myanmar's human rights, Tom Andrews, reported on Wednesday that while international efforts to isolate the juntas appear to have deterred its ability to buy military equipment, it still imported $253 million worth of weapons, dual-use technologies, manufacturing equipment, and other materials in the 12 months to March. The report said Myanmar had helped the international bank, including those from Southeast Asian neighbors island, for its purchases. Facing its biggest challenges since its 2021 coup against Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi's government, Myanmar's military is caught up in a multiple low-intensity conflicts and grappling to stabilize a crumbling economy. Western countries have imposed multiple financial sanctions on Myanmar's military bank and the associated businesses. The central bank said local and international banks engaged in transaction with Myanmar has undergone comprehensive due intelligence measures for all businesses, relationships, and transactions. The financial transactions are only for the importation of essential goods and basic necessities for Myanmar's civilians, such as medicine and medical supplies, agriculture and livestock supplies, fertilizers, edible oil, and fuel, it said. The UN report said exports from the Singapore had pledged to just over $10 million from over $110 million in 2022, but that Thai companies in the Thailand partially filled the gaps, transferring $120 million worth of weapons and materials in 2023, double from the previous year. Thailand's foreign ministry said in a statement on Thursday that the country's banking and financial institutions follow protocols like other major financial hubs, adding that government will look into the UN's rapporteur's report. Myanmar has arrested 4 executives of supermarket chain, including and officials of the Japanese joint venture, for selling rice at inflated price, state media said on Monday, at the world tour country's ruling junta struggles to stabilize its economy. The impoverished Southeast Asian country has been in a turmoil since its military deposed on elected civilians government in February 2021, sparking widespread protests that have morphed into a nationwide armed resistance. Authorities say that they arrested 11 people, including the rice traders and officials of mines and retailers, accusing them of inflating price by 31% of 70% from the prescribed level. the global news Light of Mayhem newspaper said. In Tokyo, Japan, Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshimasa Yayenshi said police in Myanmar's commercial capital of the Yangon were questioning Japanese nationals. The Japanese government intended to continue taking appropriate steps while urging local authorities for his early release, he told reporters. Advertisements grew to Such efforts include maintaining contact with the Japanese citizens, employers, and effort necessary support, he added. The junta's run Myanmar's newspaper said an executive from the supermarket chain Aenon Orange, a joint venture between Japan Aenon and the Yangon-based Creation Myanmar, was among those arrested. A junta spokesperson did not respond to the telephone call to seek comment. An Aenon spokesperson said that the company employee had been detained in Myanmar and it was working with the Japanese embassy to get more details. The Philippines has welcomed Vietnam's recognition of the Marianas UN failing to secure its right on an extension continental shelf in the South China Sea. Its foreign ministry said, adding it was ready to hold talk with their honey to resolve any issues. We are ready to engage Vietnam on possible ways forward that would help achieve a mutual benefit solution to the South China Sea issues, the foreign ministry said in a statement on Monday. The Philippines last week filed a claim with the United Nations to an extended continental shelf at its sixth recognition to its entitlement beyond its 200 nautical miles executive economic zone in South China Sea. The UN International Seas Law Convention allows coastal states to establish a continental shelf covering the seabed and the subvoid beyond its EEZ and not exceeding 350. Nautical miles from its territory. Vietnam said it was willing to talk to Manila as it seeks measures that are in line with the interests of both countries. China's foreign ministry said last month it opposed the Philippines' unilateral submission, which is said infringe on the sovereignty right and the jurisdiction. Vietnam's and the Philippines has overlapped claims in the dispute waterways, which China, Brunei, and the Malaysians also have claims. China claims almost the entire South China Sea, condoles from more than $3 trillion in annual ship commerce. In 2016, the Parliament Court of Arbitration in the Hague said China's claim had no legal basis, a decision Belgium has rejected. The Philippines donate Marcos and the Duterte political dynasty uneasy allies for 2 years, gearing up for the election shutdown that could upset policy stability in the Southeast Asian nation in the coming years. Vice President Sara Duterte's resignation as the education minister in the President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. cabinet was followed on Tuesday by her bombshell announcement that her father, ex-president Rodrigo Duterte, and two brothers would run for the Senate next year. The collapse of the alliance had long been expected, but the political challenges by the Duterte men could upset Marcos' hope for the considerating power. So far, he could groom a potential census for the 28, when analysts say the Sara Duterte may seek the top job. Philippine president will limit it to a single-year term. It is a threat, said John. University of Philippines political science professor, it is a message to the Mocoses as it is a message to the Filipinos people that we are alive and kicking. Marcos, 66, smudged off of Duterte's plan, telling reporters on Thursday, it's a free country. They are allowed to do whatever they want. It is unclear how the potential candidacy by the Duterte 79 and his sons they would not fight for the Senate race until October might affect policies in the near term. What victories it may in the midterm election by the Duterte's family backed by their strong political basis could complicate Marcos' effort to pass law that diverges from the Duterte's interests. The former president may be motivated to run for political protection, said Malia-based political analyst Julio Armando. Duterte is being investigated by the International Criminal Court over his signature war on drugs campaign, where thousands were gunned down in what authorities call vigilantes killing during his 2016-2022 presidency. Henry Roque is spokesperson with when he was a president, dismissed the suggestion, saying the court has no jurisdiction over the Philippines. China's top social media companies have condemned online hate speech targeting Japanese, delivering a vigorous response to comment triggered by the knife attack last week that killed one person and injured a Japanese mother and child. Such wave of the sentiment and the vocal nationalist elements are not uncommon, but companies from the WeChat owner Tech10 to TikTok ByteDance own sister sites Douyin, Weibo, and NetEase condemned last week's remark. The comment has disrupted the positive and peaceful atmosphere of the platform and even indicted unlawful behavior. Douyin said in an online post on Sunday, citing extreme and enormous statements that were promoting xenophobias in the letters of the series of knife attack nationwide. A Japanese mother and her preschooler were injured in the eastern city of Suzhou while waiting for the school bus. A Chinese bus attendant died of injuries suffering during a bid to intervene anti-Japanese sentiment in a China stem from the bitter memories of the neighbors' World War II aggression, leading some to celebrate the targeting of the citizens in the attack. The extreme comment on Douyin stood out from the flow of attributes that praised the heroism of the 55-year-old bus attendant, Ho Young-in, it added. Toksen said it had tackled 836 instances of related content that infringe its rules. Some netizens incited confrontation between China and Japan, extreme nationalism, and quoted various extreme remarks online. It said online comments on Saturday state media also condemned the online hate speech. We will also not accept the hype of the xenophobia and hate speech by the individuals. The government control people's daily said in an editorial on Friday. This is unacceptable to mainstream China society and the U.S. China and us, China. On Japan's scale, Mount Fuji officially stated this year's climbing season about 19 minutes before sunrise on Monday, levying new trail fees and limiting hikers' numbers to climb overcrowding at 3 a.m. officials. Opening a new installed gate at the station placed just over halfway up the 3,776 meters. Park is a symbol of Japan and the magnet for tourists. New swimmers into the countries at the record pace. Climbers must pay 2,000 yen and their numbers will be limited to 4,000 a day after complaints of litters population and pollution and dangerous crowding trail flowed in last year. I think Mount Fuji will be very happy if everyone is more conscious about the environment and things like taking rubbish home with them, said Sankyo Khan, 61, who was one of the about 1,200 hikers gathered on the first day of the new measures. The yuan slide to a 38-year low and made Japan an irresistible bargain for overseas visitors. They are injecting record sum into the national coffers, but are also putting strain on facilities for travel and hospitality, not to maintain the patience of locals. Heroes of tourists became the traffic hazard at the nearby photograph spot where Mount Fuji appeared to float over a convenience store, driving officials to put up a barrier of black marsh to obstruct the views that has gone viral online. The climbing season this year on Mount Fuji, which straddled the prefectures of the Yamanashi and Shikuka, about 136 kilometers from Tokyo, runs until September 10th, after which the weather gets too cold and snowy. At least active stratovolcano, whose last eruption was in 107. 17,700 Mount Fuji has been on site to Shinto and Buddhist worship for centuries. The numbers of climbers from pre-pandemic levels last year, with about 300,000 annually. The Environment Ministry said hikers typically start in the wee hour to make it to the top in the time for sunrise. A Palestinian Imig Jadel group fired a barrage of rockets into Israel on Monday in an apparent show of force as Israeli tanks pressed their advantage deeper into the Gaza and fence fighting residents and officials said. The armed wing of Islamic Jihad has Iranian-backed ally of Hamas said its fighters fired jet rockets towards several Israeli settlements near the fence with Gaza in response to the crime of the Zionist enemy against our Palestinian people. The volley of around 200 rockets caused no casualties, according to the Israel military, but it shows militants still possess rocket capabilities. Among almost 9 months into Israel's offensive, it's capitalizing threats against it. In some parts of Gaza, military continue to stage Israel's force its area that the army had left months ago. On Monday, Israelis tanks deepened their incursion into the Sejajia suburb in the eastern Gaza city for the 50 days and take advantage for that in the western and the central Rafah in South Gaza near the border with Egypt, residents said. The Israeli military said it has killed a number of militants in combat in the Sharjah on Monday and found large amounts of the weapons there. Hamas said that in the Rafah, its militants lure an Israel force into the bombing trap house in the east of the city and then blew it up, causing casualties. Also, Israel's military said that an airstrike killed a militant who fired an anti-tank missile. Israel has signaled that its operation in Rafah, meant to stamp out Hamas, will soon. After the intense phase of the war is over, its forces will focus on smaller-scale operation meant to stop Hamas resembling, officials said. The war began. Hamas-led fire burst into the southern Israel on October 7, killed 1,200 people and took around 250 hostage into the civilians and soldiers back in Gaza, according to the Israeli terrorists. High ground and the naval counter-offensive has also so far killed nearly 38,000 people, accordingly to the Gaza Health Ministry, and also left the heavily built-up coastal enclaves in rent. The Gaza Health Ministry does not distinguish between combatants and the non-combatants, but officials said most of the deaths are civilians. Israel had lost 316 soldiers in Gaza, said the third Palestinian deaths are fighters. Major bosses in the Gulf rose in nearly trade on Monday, with a Saudi index leading gain on the concern of the fuel supply district streaming from the park's summer fuel consumption and the OPEC Plus cut in the third quarter Oil prices a key contributor to the Gulf economic extended grain to the 4 executive session with the Brent crude trading 0.69% higher at $885.59 a barrel by 750 Saudi Arabs. Brent benchmark stock index rose 0.7%, boosted by the heavy grain in the energy and material sector stocks. Newly listed AI Teasers Group telecom industry rose 2.6%, and the largest Islamic lender, El Rajil Banking, an investment corporation, gained 1%. Saudi Arabia state oil company Aramco rose 1.1% after the company signed contracts worth more than $25 for the second phase of the expansion of its Jafar field and the third phase of the expanding its main gas network. The quarterly percentage of 0% continuing in winning stroke to the 20th season. The Gulf's largest ladder quarter national bank gaining 0.1%, and the petrochemical makers industry quarter inting up to 0.2%. Abdul Habib's main index rose 0.1%, gaining from the third season in a row, supported by the 0.4% rise in the UAE's biggest listed company, international holding companies, and the 2.9% jump in the IHC Owners Investments Family Multiply Group. Dubai's main index was trading 0.1% higher, with the Emirates Central Cooling System Corporation surging 3.4%, and Troll Operation Slick Company rising 0.9%. You are watching the international news on the Atlantic Television Network. We return after this break.
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring on sport news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economy, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on The Fact Today, only on ATN.
Back, this is the international news on Atlantic Television Network. Now the rest of our stories. France's political party rushed in to build a unity front aimed at blocking the path to government of Marine Le Pen's far-right national rally on Monday after it made historic gains to win the first round of the parliamentary election. The RN and its allies won Sunday's round with 33% of the votes, followed by the left-wing bloc with 28%, and well ahead of the President Emmanuel Macron's centuries, who scored just 20%. Official results from the Interior Ministry showed. While financial markets rallied on relief, the RN tallies was not greater. It was still a huge setback for Macron, who had called the snap election after his ticket was trounced by the RN in the European Parliament election last month. Whether the anti-immigrant escopedic RN can from the government will depend now on how successful other parties manage to thwart Le Pen by rallying around the best palace rival candidates in the hundreds of constituencies across France. Leaders of both the left-wing New Popular Front and Macron-centric alliance indicated on Sunday night that they would withdraw their own candidates in districts where another candidate was better placed to beat the RN in next Sunday's roundup. However, it was not clear whether such a pass would always apply if the left-wing candidate was from the far left France Unblowed party of the Jean-Luc Mélenchon, in one of the most diverse figures in France politics, both entrusting and horrifying voters with his unbridled tax and spend proposal and a class war rhetoric. France Minister Bruno Le Maire, a Macron party ally, also calling on the voters to choose an FI candidate is dangerous for the nation, he told France in radio. Marine Teodela, a senior member of the Economist Hungary's nationalist government launched its presidency of the European Union on Monday with a Trump-like call to mark European great against after UN lawmakers questioned whether it should be allowed to take on the role. Their concerns were based on Prime Minister Viktor Orban, many clash with the Brussels over the democratic month. Hungarian Democratic said the countries will be the honest broker, while analysts says Badupe's actions at the forefront of the UP policy make are more likely to be restricted given the Brussels in e-transition phase following the election in June. A presidency rules in a to set the agenda, their meeting of the UN members in all fields except foreign or Eurozone matters, 6 consensus among EU member states and brokers agreement on the legislation with the European Parliament. It will take months for the new European Commission and the new members of the Parliament to be in their stride, analysts said. That means that even though far-right-gain politicians potentially sympathetic to Hungary's priorities mid-grain in the EU election, the presidency's ability to drive policy through is limited. There will only be a small influence on the legislative agenda that starts much later, possibly at the end of the year, possibly at the beginning of the year of next year, said Pavel Havlik, research fellow at the Association for the International Affairs. Hungary has said in the priorities, including Russian Western Balkan membership of the EU, illegal migration and economic competitiveness. Critics note an enlargement push does not include Ukraine. Hungary was a history of blocking or delaying foreign and arms for Ukraine, as well as maintaining ties with Moscow. It has also criticized EU effort to cut dependence on China ahead of the assumption of the EU presidency. The bloc hurried through new sanctions against the Russians and the launch membership talk with the Ukraine. Sozi Demusson, senior fellow at the European Council on Foreign Relations, said a Barsi presidency launch suggested Hungary might seek to push its nationalist line. Jonas Grubel, senior policy analyst at the European Policy Centre, says some of the priorities, such as competitiveness, struck on core with the rest of the EU, but this would likely to combine with the right-wing rhetoric on the migration, the Ukraine war, and the rules of law. It is a presidency of the mixed narratives, but far-right elements will prevail. The Kremlin said on Monday that the Belarusian military reports that Ukraine had been moving from more troops, weapons, and military equipment into the North Zhytomyr region, which border Belarus, was a cause for the concern. The Belarusian Defense Ministry alleged that Ukraine was building up its force on Saturday. A spokesman for the Ukraine's border guard service said on Monday that such settlements were part of the Russian-supported information operation and that the Kyiv kept force near the border with Belarus to prevent any provocations. When asked about the Belarusian build-up claim, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov reminded reporters on Monday that Belarus was part of the Union States with Russia and that dialogue between Moscow and the sink, including between their intelligence agencies, was close. And our ministries of the defense are in a constant contact with each other. Of course, this is a cause for concern, not only for the Minsk, but also for Moscow, because we are indeed allies and partners. Peskov said Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko would both attend the summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is taking place in the Kazakhstan on July 3-4, and would discuss the matter if they deem it necessary. Belarus, a close Russian ally that provides support for the Moscow call its special military operation in Ukraine, said last week that it was reinforcing its border with the Ukraine after a security incident had deployed a division of the multiple launch rocket system to test their combat readiness. The Belarusian Border Guard Service said its force has brought down a quadrupter on the Wednesday after it has allegedly illegally crossed the border from Ukraine to collect information about the Belarusian border infrastructure. Earlier last week, the border service said materials from the homemade bomb had been found concealed in the same area, and that it was aware that the unit of the pro-Ukraine Russian fighters was present in the Ukrainian region bordering Belarus. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak will on Monday says only his Conservatives can counter a Labour-led government, and that the vote for the Nigel Farage right-wing Reform UK would hamper any chance of the party form a strong opposition. Appealing to all both concerned defeat before Thursday elections, Sunak will appeal to those quarters on the political right who are considering voting for Farage's party in protest of the Conservative government. The Conservative look at the kick out of the office after 14 turbulent years mark a Britain's vote to leave the European Union in 2016 and the cost of living crisis that followed the COVID-19 pandemic and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Opinion poll has consistently given Keir Starmer's central-left Labour Party and around 20 points lead, with the support for reform potentially splitting the central-right vote and the centrist Labour Democratic further draining consecutive support. Sunak will say at a rally that reform just won't win enough seats to oppose Labour, saying the party has previously said it would be good to get a handful of members of the parliament elected. Just imagine that hundreds and hundreds of Labour MPs opposed by just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elected MPs, Sunak will say, according to extract of this speech, a Labour government would be bad for our countries, and an unchecked Labour government will be a disaster from which it will take decades to recover. Farage is one of the Britain's most recognizable and decisive politicians, and has spent decades ruling against the establishment and the European Union, and has in recent years campaigned for Donald Trump in the United States. He entered the election in early June vowing to supplant the Conservative as the main party of the right. Poll appears to show that reform support peaked in the second half of June, shortly before Farage said the West provokes Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Some of his candidates have been dropped for racist or inappropriate remarks. While British electoral system means reform may win millions of votes, the party is unlikely to win more than a handful of parliamentary seats. But that could be enough to please the right in many areas and hand victory to Labour. Britons will likely elect a central-left government, as much of the European wing's right, including in France, where Marine Le Pen's far-right national rallies won the first round of the parliament election on Sunday. The extremely dangerous Category 4 storm Hurricane Barry barreled across the Atlantic Ocean on Sunday right towards the Caribbean Windward Island, where it is expected to bring in life-threatening wind and the flash flooding on Monday, the U.S. National Hurricane Center said. The phase hurricane of the 2024 season was located about 150 miles southeast at Barbados on Sunday night, with maximum sustained wind of 130 mpb. Is expected to remain an extremely dangerous major hurricane as it is a core move through the wide windward island into the Eastern Caribbean, the HC said in a latest advisory. The center of the hurricane is expected to travel across the windward island on Monday morning as a Category 4 storm, the second strongest level of the 5-step scale, bringing potentially catastrophic wind damage to St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Grenada. It is rare for a major hurricane to appear this early in the Atlantic hurricane season, which runs from June 1st to November 30. On Sunday, Beryl became the easiest Category 4 hurricane on record, beating Hurricane Dennis, which became a Category 4 on July 8, 2005, according to NHC data. Hurricane warning have been issued in the Barbados as St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadine Island, Grenada and Tobago. A tropical storm watch has been issued for the Dominica, Trinidad, and part of the Dominican Republic and the Haiti. Authorities and residents of the Caribbean islands were prepared for the storm arrival. Tobago has opened shelter, closed schools for Monday, and canceled elective surgeries in the hospitals, authorities said. The hurricane is expected to bring 3 to 6 inch, 8 to 15 cm of the rain across Barbados and the windward island throughout the day on Monday, which the NHC warned could cause fresh flooding in vulnerable areas. The U.S. Supreme Court is expected on Monday to rule on the legality of the Republican-backed law in Florida and tax intended to restrain social media companies from content and platforms deemed objectionable. Status and the industries as urged violate and the free speech right of these businesses. The justices have been asked to decide whether the two laws run foul of the protection under the U.S. Constitution phase amendment against government restriction of the speech, as the industries urged by interfering with the editorial discretion of the social media companies. The 2021 law could put limits on the content moderation practices by the large media platforms. The Supreme Court has set Monday as its final day for the decision in the current term, which began on October. The law was challenged by tech industry's trade group Next Choice and the Computers and Communications Industries Association. Host members include Facebook parent Meta, platforms Alphabet, Google, which own YouTube, as well as TikTok and the Snapchat owners. Lower courts built on the issues blocking Key's provision of the Florida's law while upholding the Texas measures. Neither law has gone into effect due to the integration at issue, such whether to the phase amendment protects the editorial discretion of the social media platforms and prohibit governments from forcing companies to publish content against their will. The companies have said that without such discretion, including the ability to block or remove contents of users, priority is certain posts over others, or including additional content, their website would be overrun with spam, bullying, extremism, and hate speech. Many Republicans have argued that social media platforms Steve conversation voice in guise of content moderation, branding it as censorship. President Joe Biden's administration opposed the Florida and Texas law, arguing that the content moderation restriction violate the phase amendment by forcing platforms to present and promote content they view as objectionable. Officials from the Florida and Texas countered that the content moderation action by these companies fall outside the protection of the Fees Amendment because that the conduct is not itself speech. The Texas law would forbid social media companies with at least 500 million monthly active users from acting to censor users based on viewpoints and allow either users or the Texas Attorney General to sue to enforce it. Florida's law would constrain the ability of a large platform to exclude certain content by prohibiting the censorship or banning of political candidates or journalist enterprise. The U.S. Supreme Court highly anticipated ruling on former President Donald Trump bids for immunity in a federal criminal case involving his effort to overrun his 2020 election laws is expected on Monday, the final day of its current term. The court, whose 6-7 consecutive majority, including 3 justices Trump appointed, seems declined during April 25 argument to recognize some level of criminal immunity, though perhaps a mirror vision has then absorbed immunity for officials act that he had sought. Trump is a Republican candidate challenging Democratic President Joe Biden in the November 5 U.S. election in the rematch from 4 years ago. However, its role, the court's slowly handle of the blockbuster case already has helped Trump by making it unlikely that any trials on these charges brought by special counsel Jack Smith would be completed before the election. The Supreme Court is due to rule on Trump's appeal of the lower court decision rejecting his immunity claim. Trump has argued that he is immune from the prosecution because he was serving as president when he took this action that led to the charges. Smith has opposed presidential immunity from prosecution based on the principle that no one is above the law. During the argument, Trump's legal team has urged the justice to fully shield former president from criminal charges for official acts taken in office. Without such immunity, Trump's lawyer said sitting president would face blackmail and extortion by the presidential rivals due to the threats of the future prosecution. Trump, 78, is the first former U.S. president to be criminally prosecuted, as well as the first former president convicted of the crime. In the special counsel August 2022 indictment, Trump was charged with a conspiracy to defraud the United States corruptly, observing an official proceeding, and conspired to do so conspired against the rights of Americans to vote. He has pleaded not guilty. Trump's trial has been scheduled to start on March 4 before the delay over the immunity issues. Now, no trial's date is set. Trump's made this immunity claim to the trial judge in October, meaning issues has been litigated for about 9 months. In a separate case brought in a New York state court, Trump was found guilty by the jury in the Manhattan on May 30 to 34 counts of the falsifying document to cover up hush money paid to the porn star to avoid a sex scandal before the 2016 election. Trump also faced criminal charges in 2 other cases. He said he had pleaded not guilty in those and called all the cases against him politically motivated. A lawyer for the special counsel office told the Supreme Court during the argument that the absolute immunity sought by Trump would shield president from criminal liability from bribery, treason, sedition, murder, and in this case trying to overturn the proper result of an election and stay in power. And that's the size of the package. Before we go, let's take a look at the major headlines. South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa appoints John Steenhuisen, Minister of Agriculture. Philippines, political dynasty gears up for election shutdown. Russia, Belarusian military reports seen as cause for concern. United States highly anticipated ruling of Trump's immunity bid expected. Australia, Jimmy Lai urged judge to carefully consider their position. I am Immaculate Irikana. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can join us on all our media platforms, Facebook and YouTube, Atlantic Television Network, Instagram and TikTok, Atlantic TV Network 1. Atlantic TV Net. You can also watch us live on our website, atlanticnetwork.tv. Peace and unity are the pathways to progress.
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara